p.m. The Lunchroom. Informative, enlightening, provocative, engaging. The Lunchroom on RCI. Food for thought. The station that gives you, more lunch.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Lunchroom on Radio Caribbean International for Monday, the 11th of November, 2024. And this is program number 1280 of the Lunchroom. I'm your host, Calix George Jr. Now, in addition to 101.1 FM radio, you can also get us at our website, rcisaintlucia.com. And we're also streaming live on Facebook. You just have to search for us on the official page of Radio Caribbean International. And of course, please be sure to like and share that as well with your friends and family. Now, if you want to call in to tell us what's on your plate today, the number to do so is 452-3046. Again, 452-3046. And you also have the option of using WhatsApp. And you can just call in to 724-0008 on WhatsApp. Or you could also send in a message. And again, that number is 724-0008. Now, a bit of history for today. Back in the year 1675, the German mathematician Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz demonstrated integral calculus for the first time to find the area under the graph of the function y equal fx. In the year 1745, Bonnie Prince Charlie's Jacobite army invaded England in an attempt to restore the House of Stuart to the British throne. 1918 on this day saw World War I's armistice signed by the Allies and Germany coming into effect, with the hostilities ending at the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. 1975 on this day saw Australian Prime Minister Gore Whitlam being removed from office by Governor General Sir John Kerr. It was the first time an elected prime minister was removed in Australian history. In 1992, on this day, the Church of England approved the ordination of female priests. And on this day, November 11th in 2004, Yasser Arafat's death from unidentified causes was confirmed by the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the PLO. And Mahmoud Abbas was elected PLO chairman shortly after. We now move on to our dish of the day. The daily dish is brought to you the kind compliments of our good friends at Tiles Plus.
One test for your home, I see. Bathroom, kitchen, pantry. Need test for your balcony. Come down to Tiles Plus, satisfaction guarantee. Tiles Plus, Tiles Plus, Tiles Plus. Big test with unbeatable cost. Customer service, A+. Need all kind of tests. Come down to Tiles Plus. We also got gas and vanity. Boss, you'll see. Come down to my nobody. We got the best tiles on island. Trust me. We are located Land Street in Castries, Bosses Grizzly Lakes, and Flag Street in Beaufort. Telephone number 453-7939. Tiles Plus.
Serving now, the Daily Dish.
And welcome back to our program here today for a brand new week of the Lunchroom on Radio Caribbean International. Now, of course, over the weekend, you may have participated in a few events that were on. First, I want to make mention to the National Youth Awards. And that's become a very important staple in the calendar for recognition of young people in St. Lucia and the work that they're doing, the efforts that they are putting their energies towards. And so certainly we do want to recognize those who have been contributing in different forms or fashion in terms of youth development and different areas and pursuits, whatever they may be. And quite often we hear too much of the negativity regarding young people and Unfortunately, we don't see a lot of the good stuff that they actually are up to, whether through their own innovation and creativity, they're using their talents and time and treasure in lots of different ways. And so I think it's really important to have these opportunities for recognition regarding a lot of the things that young people are, in fact, very passionate about and very much interested in about. And certainly, we've seen over the years, a number of young people really becoming major advocates for change, and quite often they see where the world is headed. They, in fact, abhor a lot of what has happened in the past, and they are fearful of what their world is going to be when they're no longer even going to be young, and that's of course a very expected state of play, and in particular we've seen the issue of climate change. And lots of young people are going to be seemingly in a world that is a lot more uncertain and a lot more unstable in terms of the kind of weather, the impact of the climate that it is having on everyday life, whether it may be that our world is becoming far hotter, it is becoming much dry in many places, water shortages are becoming major issues in many countries, while at the same time, we're seeing unexpected, uh, you know, weather events in places that normally they don't even get very much water at all. And we saw the flooding that occurred recently in much of Spain and Andalusia, where cities, people who were well into their 90s never ever saw that extent of flooding which was occurring there. And we've seen it as well in the Sahara this year, where flooding was a major impact for lots of people. So there is a lot to be concerned about for young people, and their voices, their views, their advocacy, their action is certainly very important. And we do hope that that is not lost. And so, certainly, entities like the National Youth Council and the National Students Council, those are very important in the frame of conversation as to what they want to see. What do they want to see in terms of the state of their education? What do they want to see in terms of opportunities for themselves and for things in, we've been hearing a lot about school sports, for example. And I think it would be important so that uh, these young people themselves, in fact, can bring their own perspectives to bear on the matters that are in fact impacting them. So certainly, we want to just recognize that event, which was held over at the pavilion at Rodney Bay over the weekend. Also, graduations, UE Global Campus. So, congratulations to all those coming out of that. And of course, there are a number of institutions having their graduations at this time. So, kudos to all of those who put in the effort, burnt the midnight oil, and who have made it to the finish line. So, definitely, I think a couple hundred, I think at least over 100 St. Lucians, in fact, graduating from UE Global Campus. So that certainly is quite commendable. And of course, that is just but one of the campuses within the UE system. And so many others will, in fact, be having or already have had their graduations over that time. Now, today, of course, is also the actual date of Remembrance Day. However, much of the celebrations are held the Sunday nearest to the day itself, Remembrance Sunday. And that certainly was what obtained in the United Kingdom. It's certainly what obtained right here in St. Lucia as well. And so it is, of course, a time for remembering the sacrifice, the lives, the individuals who put themselves up, who went out there in service of country and the war effort, particularly in this context, the efforts that were undertaken by St. Lucians and many West Indians through the British West Indies Regiment, and later on, of course, through the First and Second World Wars. First World War between 1914 and 1918 was the quote unquote war to end all wars. And of course, that did not come to pass. It, in fact, saw a pretty hard line being taken by the Allies, quote unquote, and of course what they put forward against Germany at the time, and of course those which were allied to Germany, and that did not leave for a very pleasant taste in the mouth of many Germans. And of course, later on, it created that socioeconomic atmosphere within which an Adolf Hitler could come to the fore, and in fact, his National Socialist Party, which was pretty much ultra-right party, they came into power, and by 1939 were in fact leading Europe back into war, leading Germany to begin its invasions of Poland and many other countries across Europe. And that, of course, led to World War II. World War II, of course, some may even say was even more extensive than World War One, in that there were, in fact, two fronts being fought. There was, in fact, the war in Europe, as well as the war in the Pacific, the war in Asia, and of course the implications for the war at that point was very telling. Now, one perhaps might say during the First World War, Britain, its empire was still perhaps at its peak, and was pretty strong, and was able to garner a lot of support from its empire. So from Canada, from Australia and New Zealand, Anzac, as well as from the West Indies, and nearly 16,000 West Indians, in fact, participated in the First World War. And that coming out of what was known as the British West India Regiment, a regiment that, in fact, had been raised many years before that, actually, and particularly as a result of a lot of the struggles of war in the West Indies, and the realization by the British that, in fact, their European forces were not very effective in the tropical climates like the West Indies. And so, in fact, the British West India Regiment ended up doing quite a lot of the military work in the West Indies, as well as even in Africa. So it certainly is a time that we have to remember the contributions of many of these individuals who brought up the call and went out there. And of course, it did expose quite a lot of the prejudice, the discrimination that was the British Empire at that time. And so many of these individuals, although they were expecting that they were in fact going to be on the front lines, and they were expecting to be, in the trenches, and coming, being able to bring back great honor and whatnot. And they ended up in many instances actually doing what was considered the rather mundane and dirty work, really, of the military, and so that caused quite a lot of issues during that entire period. And so, but even so, we did see again later on other West Indians going on, and in fact getting into active combat, and a number of them, in fact, even losing their lives. Famously, of course, as well, we should note the members of who went on to join the Royal Air Force. Of course, back in the World War One era, that was pretty new. I think it was called the Royal Flying Corps or something of that nature at that time, and eventually became the RAF, the Royal Air Force. And there were Saint-Lucians who participated in the RAF and going on these bombing squadrons, and indeed many of them, in fact, lost their lives, and quite a number of them actually from, being remembered, at least in the case of Soufriere, although they did have families all over. So there is that community in Soufriere named Wingsville, after these winged officers, St. Lucian officers within the Royal Air Force. And so the names of the streets in Wingsville, which is just east of the original downtown core of Soufriere, that generally residential area, is named after those individuals. And so you'll get streets like Delieu Street and Etienne Street and Smith Street, and DeVoe Street. So there were a number of those streets actually meant to honor the contribution of these individuals. There are, of course, not too many left. And I think most notably, of course, Mr. Reginald Cherubin, who in fact this year turned 100. And so certainly a big shout out to him, and thank you to him, as he still remarkably at the age of hitting a century is still full of passion, still leading the singing of many a song of that era, and is, you could not ask for an individual with, even at his point in life, being so committed to that cause and to that period of time in his life, and the contributions that he made. Of course, since then, we've also seen St. Lucians continue to become active in military service, though, of course, not under a St. Lucian flag, but as we don't have a defense force or a military, but we have seen St. Lucians serving in the British Army, as well as in the American Armed Forces as well. And so some of them have in fact come back, and we're glad to see that at least a few of them are trying to continue to keep that effort up in terms of the Commonwealth Ex-Services League. Of course, Veterans Affairs is a big thing in some places. In the United States, for example, that is certainly a huge portfolio. It's an executive level portfolio. There's a secretary responsible for Veterans Affairs, and they manage a lot of services for veterans, including, of course, the difficulty of individuals who are coming back sometimes maimed, coming back with lots of issues, whether psychologically or physically. And of course, they run a system of hospitals around the United States, which are pretty important for supporting the lives of many of these individuals. And right now, um, war is in fact a reality that we are seeing. We are seeing that, certainly more within the last couple of years, as we've witnessed with respect to what is going on in Ukraine and Russia, and the issues that abound there in terms of that continuing struggle between, I suppose you could say, East and West, and some differences in ideology and control and influence since the collapse of the USSR, the Soviet Union. We, of course, have seen a shifting of a lot of the influences within Eastern Europe. And many of these countries have since joined the European Union. So the European Union is no longer merely a Western European project. It has, in fact, embraced a number of Eastern European countries in the Baltics, for instance, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, but as well others which were originally part of the Iron Curtain, as it was known, or the Warsaw Pact. So countries like Poland, like the former Czechoslovakia, now two separate states, Czechia and Slovakia. Countries like Hungary have in fact joined. Croatia, Slovenia as well, have gotten into the European Union, and others also are looking to join the European Union. And so this is where that big tussle lies, and the fear that, in fact, the European Union will be coming possibly to Ukraine was a certainly a major concern, perhaps, of Russia, and they, for all sorts of different reasons, perhaps, are trying to reclaim what was perhaps the heart of the Rus, the Kievan Rus, which is in fact in Ukraine, and so it's certainly interesting how that is going to continue to pan out. Of course, also in areas like the Caucasus, those that very mountainous region between Europe and the Middle East and Turkey and Persia, Iran, that region too. Also, lots of conflict still in parts of that region, in Armenia, Azerbaijan, for example. So certainly, as we are remembering those who've gone before us and who have continued to, who made the sacrifices in the past, and those who are still out there serving in some form or fashion, we certainly do need to be thankful of them. And of course, we should also think about the internal strife that we are dealing with respect to criminal activity. And of course, the women and men of the Royal St. Lucia Police Force in particular, who are serving on a daily basis on our streets, keeping us safe. And of course, the entire discipline service on St. Lucia, inclusive of the Bordelais Correctional Facility, the St. Lucia Fire Service. So certainly there are many others out there who are playing their part. And I just want to also mention, while we're at it, the St. Lucia Cadet Corps. They, in fact, are celebrating their 95th anniversary this year. They, in fact, were formed originally as a corps at St. Mary's College back in the year 1929. And many individuals went through the hands of that corps, that cadet corps. Even individuals like Sir William Arthur Lewis, he was a member of the cadets, and it's a very important institution, especially given what we're seeing with respect to our young people right about now. And so, of course, they're 95. They're looking towards their 100th, when the country is, in fact, going to be marking its 50th anniversary of independence. They'll be marking their 100th anniversary. And it certainly is an institution that can play a significant role in in providing opportunities for young people to be able to experience the world and do so in a structured, disciplined setting, while still, of course, having the opportunity to have lots of fun and learning skills and what have you. Many countries have conscriptions. They have armies. They have defense forces. They have almost a mandatory enlistment of individuals. And so you've got to, provide some service to your country very, very early on. Usually from 18, you could be brought in to, spend 2 years in the military or in some form of national service. And that is what exists in countries that have done pretty well too. And of course, those countries, yes, do have some realities that they face in terms of war. And we can think of Israel, for example. We can think of Taiwan, for example. They have very, very active systems of mandatory service. And we don't have that, of course. We've never had that immediate culture of warfare, but we are seeing the kind of warfare that we're dealing with on the streets. And it's, of course, a very unfortunate situation where it is a bit of a warfare for the minds and hearts and souls of our young people. And we certainly do need to have good avenues through which young people can discover their island. They can learn about how a lot of things work. They can learn about their nature, the environment. And when you look at an institution like the cadets, it certainly does bring about a lot of that, in terms of the whole opportunity for camping, similar to the Scouts, of course, camping and being out and survival, which is, of course, something that we've got to be thinking about too in this very interesting world that we live in. And of course, the opportunity to learn skills, whether it might be sailing and discovering and meeting new people through camps and regional camps. So certainly we do need to look at how those institutions can play a very important role in upbringing and in filling the gap for a lot of young people who are looking for belonging. They're looking for community, and let's hope that we can see it potentially being utilized in that way. So kudos to those gentlemen who are and women who are they have done pretty well. I think last time I noticed they had a pretty large parade of almost 400 cadets all around the island, and let's hope that number can in fact continue to grow with the support of parents and teachers and community as well. That's our dish of the day. When we come back, we'll take in our weather report and then head back to taking some calls.
This has been The Daily Dish.
Want tiles for your home, I see. Bathroom, kitchen, pantry. Need tiles for your balcony. Come down to Tiles Plus, satisfaction guarantee. Tiles Plus, Tiles Plus, Tiles Plus. Because if unbeatable cost. Customer service, A plus. This all kind of tiles. Come down to Tiles Plus. We are so glad, gas, and vanity. Boss, you'll see. Come down to mind nobody. We got the best tiles on island. Trust me. We are located Land Street in Castries, Bosses Jubilee Lanes, and Flag Street in Beaufort. Telephone number 453-7939.
Island style, yeah. We got the time to make you go. We got the time to make you say, yeah. We'll have to make the right choice. Island style, whoa. We got the time that will make you happy. Island style, oh yeah. We make your dream come alive in Island style.
We have tiles and thin sets, pieces and ground. Everything you need is on the house out. For the best price and the latest style. Take a little drive down to Island Style car.
We got the time to make you go. We got the time to make you say, yeah. Quality, price, service, choice. It's all an Island Style.
Visit us at our showrooms in Bellarosa, Rodney Bay, on the John Compton Highway, Cass Street, and behind Ruby's Gas Station on the Library Viewfort Highway. So call us on 450-452 or 453-TILE. Island Style, Tile and Bath. When you think tile, think Island Style.
This is Radio Caribbean International. It's now time for the weather news.
Island Style, yeah. We got the time to make you go. We got the time to make you say, yeah. We'll have to make the right choice. Island Style, whoa. We got the time that will make you happy. Island Style, oh yeah. We make your dream come alive in Island Style.
We have tiles and thin sets, pieces and ground. Everything you need is on the house out. For the best price and the latest style. Take a little drive down to Island Style car.
We got the time to make you go. We got the time to make you say, yeah. Quality, price, service, choice. It's all an Island Style.
Visit us at our showrooms in Bellarosa, Rodney Bay, on the John Compton Highway, Cass Street, and behind Ruby's Gas Station on the Library Viewfort Highway. So call us on 450-452 or 453-TILE. Island Style, Tile and Bath. When you think tile, think Island Style.
And welcome back to the lunchroom here at Radio Caribbean International. Apologies, we aren't being able to bring you to the weather report. At this time, it's not available, but hopefully later on in the day we can do that for you. Now, of course, if you want to call in to tell us what's on your plate today, the number to do so is 452-3046. Again, 452-3046. And you can also message into our WhatsApp number. That is 724-0008. Again, 724-0008. Now, over the weekend as well, the Prime Minister of St. Lucia was over in the Commonwealth of Dominica. And that country just recently marked another anniversary of independence. November the 3rd was Independence Day in Dominica. And he was, in fact, over there for an annual conference of the Dominica Labour Party, which has been in power for a good number of years now under the under the direction of Mr. Roosevelt Skerritt. And he came into office pretty young and does not seem like he's going to be heading anywhere anytime soon. And one of the events, which in fact was happening over around the same time that weekend, it was that of the sword turning ceremony for the new international airport. The new international airport for Dominica. And for those of you who are familiar with Dominica, it's quite often the standing joke was that if Columbus were to come back from 1492 and come into this current era, the one the one country he would still recognize would be that of Dominica, basically to say that it pretty much looks the same. And and of course that's not quite exactly the case, but the point is that it's a very, very mountainous island. Of course, I suppose geologically it's a younger island than Saint Lucia in many ways, and so it has very difficult terrain, and that has made development in Dominica pretty challenging. So, in as much as it is actually, in terms of square miles, it's actually a larger island than Saint Lucia. I think it's about 305 square miles or thereabouts, compared to Saint Lucia's 238. And that said, though, it is largely under forest. It is very, very mountainous, very difficult topography, and that has made development challenging. And maybe that's a good thing, considering the world that we live in today and the need for more forest to combat the impacts of climate change. But it is certainly a very, very picturesque island, and has begun to make its mark in terms of ecotourism. Of course, the other challenge there is that the population has has never been as large as perhaps other islands which are even smaller than it. So even islands that would have only 100 square miles, like St. Vincent and Grenada, and they have about 100,000 plus in population. And Dominica, even though it is 3 times the size of those islands, in fact has about 2/3 of the population of those islands. So it has been a big challenge for them in terms of development and keeping creating opportunities for development, for investment. And of course, we also have seen the impacts of hurricanes, catastrophic ones, most recently that of Erica and Maria. Now, they have embarked on a project which has been long standing for, one could perhaps say, nearly every single Dominican leader or prime minister has dreamt of being able to achieve or to be able to have for the island an international airport. And of course, the reason for that is that we have seen the impacts of air infrastructure, like international airports, and the importance of connectivity, so as to entice and encourage the growth of tourism. One can look at St. Lucia, and perhaps we were more fortunate than Dominica in that we had a large plain on the south side of the island, which lent itself pretty nicely to the establishment of runways, of airports. And that's exactly what happened, first instance, with the Americans during the 1940s, establishing the Bean Field or Bean Airfield. And that was originally supposed to have been designed to accommodate 3 runways of 5,000 feet in length. And so, thanks to the what was left over from that American period, it got some use beyond that, but it was from the 1970s, with the help of the Canadian government, St. Lucia was able to, in fact, develop an international airport. And really, what makes the difference in terms of international airport is really just it's primarily the length of the runway, the ability for you to have a runway that is long enough to be able to handle planes, particularly, of course, the major constraint being at takeoff and the amount of weight you have, the longer the runway you need. So that is why we were able to do it. Certainly much easier than Dominica back in the 1970s, albeit, of course, it required the realignment of the V4 River. And every so often we see the reality of that river trying to regain its original course or something close to that, which results sometimes in flooding of that very same runway. So, right. So as I said, I mean, the reality is all our airports really are international. Once you're going over a boundary from one country to the next, a border, you're really international. But when we mean international, we're really talking about airports that have runways which can handle long haul flights or medium haul flights, and particularly to open up markets in North America and Europe, transatlantic. Dominica has been able to do some of that, even though it has not actually built its international airport as yet. And that is thanks to some changes in aviation and having planes that actually can come in. And so there's actually a class of planes that can actually do these short runways, land on shorter runways, shorter distances. And so they've been able to benefit from that, and actually having some direct flights now coming out of Miami. And I believe as well, they're quite possibly, I think, New York as well soon. But of course, the presence of that a full length 9,000 foot runway would certainly be pretty big, a pretty big game changer for that of Dominica, and encouraging its development. Prior to this, of course, they've effectively, like St. Lucia, were operating 2 airports, very, very short runway at Kane Field, just north of the capital city, Roseau. And that runway is really not even 3,000 feet. And so you can well appreciate very, very limited. And then, of course, there was also in the north of the island what was formerly the Melville Hall Airport, which is now, I think, has been renamed after that of Rosie Douglas and Dame Eugenia Charles. And that's a little longer in terms of the, the full, the standard runway length is somewhere around 4,600 feet in length. And they have actually done some work in extending it over the years. So that is, in fact, the principal airport operating right now in Dominica. Of course, similar to St. Lucia, however, it's a pretty good distance away from the capital. It's way up in the north. And the new airport, which is being constructed, is even further north, actually. And so, in fact, it's right up on the northeast coast of Dominica, in a region known as Woodford Hill. Actually, it's a region that I think one of the former prime ministers of Dominica, Rosie Douglas, was actually his family estate is in that region of Woodford Hill. And so that is where, in fact, they have undertaken this significant effort of constructing this international airport. What it actually effectively means is that they are having to level, although this area, compared to a lot of the rest of the island, is relatively gently sloping. It still is a major undertaking, and it still requires the leveling off of hills and the creating of significant culverts and the filling off of certain valleys to be able to get that length, that continuous length of runway that is required. And so it is certainly a major project which is being undertaken in Dominica. What it means as well is that actually it will be the last island which would not have a runway of that length. St. Vincent and the Grenadines, you would recall, was in the same boat as Dominica for quite some time, and they were able to achieve the development of Argyle International Airport in the southeast of the island. Some challenges there too, in that obviously, I mean, the terrain, but not just the terrain, the issue of wind and crosswinds, the orientation of the runway is not the most ideal. Ideally, runways are supposed to be oriented into the direction or in the direction of the wind, the principal direction that the wind is coming from for the majority of the time. I think like 95% of the time. And so it's pretty, sometimes can be challenging in terms of that, but we haven't seen any major, as far as I'm aware, of major issues thus far with respect to its operations. Of course, it'd be more critical for smaller planes, that are lighter planes that are impacted by crosswinds more, but it certainly was also a significant achievement for that of St. Vincent. And so they too now have begun that plunge into trying to attract larger scale tourism in terms of resorts and what have you. Dominica has attempted to go ahead in terms of attracting that type of investment already, and particularly in the north of the island, which would in fact make good sense when you consider that the international airport is being constructed in the north of the island. And so already you're seeing what was the Kempinski Hotel near the Cabrits near Portsmouth. That has certainly raised the bar in terms of the visitor experience to that island and the opportunities there, but also a number of other properties really targeting eco-tourism, boutique-style properties, the likes of Secret Bay, for example, being noted as one of the best hotels in the Caribbean coming out of Dominica. So certainly is going to be a very interesting period of time for the growth of the island as we see things move forward. I mean, I say that in terms of the north of the island and places like Portsmouth, but interestingly enough, when the international airport was being built in the south, right here in St. Lucia, at which is now Hiwanora, there was in fact a great expectation that there would have been significant growth of tourism in the south as a result of that. And for many different reasons, it has not materialized to the extent that was in fact envisaged when you look back to the master plans that were being developed back in the 1960s, 1970s. And from all the way up in Canals down to which is in Miku, and all the way down to the foot of Mola Sheikh, the expectation was that all that area there was going to be developed into some sort of tourism resort related community. Uh, was that perhaps a good thing that some of it didn't happen? Perhaps so. When you consider that in some of the areas where they were planning on putting a golf course, like in the Savans wetland area, I think a lot of environmentalists today would certainly scoff at that idea. In fact, this area has now even been declared an internationally recognized wetland under the Ramsar Convention. Likewise, the Makote mangrove, that area was in fact supposed to have become the city center for the new VA4, according to what the plan said back then. And of course, again, you can well imagine the today when we look back at some of these ideas and the creating of um, a marina in the wetland and all of that, it happened up in Rodney Bay. But of course, perhaps we should be very thankful that it didn't happen in the case of VA4, where we in fact still now have our largest wetland area, that of Makote. And so certainly we've got to be able to see how you can strike a balance, however, in terms of creating of visitor expectations of an accommodation, but as well protecting the environment and allowing people to be able to enjoy the beauty of the island from a number of different perspectives. So certainly there's lots of scope for continued development in terms of tourism, but it shows that having the international airport is not an automatic guarantee in terms of your investment propositions. There's still certainly lots of other things that have to align right, and other services that also have to align right, other infrastructure that is required quite often for investment to make good sense. But of course, we'll have to talk about that perhaps some other time, as we're already out of time here at the lunchroom. And of course, we want to wish everybody a very happy and blessed Monday. I'm your host, Alex George Jr., saying goodbye.